This is Paul Sandeman with Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and especially have more fun. Otherwise, it's definitely not worth it. I have Ryan Ridding from Levergy. Interesting name, Ryan. So
Thanks.
Tell me, Ryan, what you do and why anybody listening to this podcast should listen to you.
Yeah, our bread and butter is we do digital marketing for the trade. So anything websites to SEO to PPC to social media, if it touches a pixel, we probably do it. And frankly, in this day and age, you can't not have a digital presence. So we help people make a lot of money.
Okay. So a lot of people have a lot of skepticism about digital. I mean, no offense, not everybody in your market is really honest. No offense. I said
No, they should be skeptical.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the question is, I'll start with this one. How, if you're a contractor saying, okay, I gotta do the digital marketing thing, how can I find a company? I mean, I sort of don't know what I don't know. So how am I going to do research and to find a good digital marketing company that meets my needs?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I would say what's helpful for a lot of companies first is to actually know what their needs are. And that sounds really basic, but you'd be surprised how many people aren't really clear on the goal that they're trying to accomplish. Because there's, to your point, there's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of people throwing around buzzwords and people say these things. It's really hard to know, is that worthwhile? Is that important? Is that something that I should focus on in my business? It's not a one size fits all. So first understand kind of what your needs are. Like, what is the goal you're trying to accomplish? And the other thing I think is really important is at least give yourself some education on what marketing is, what the different types of marketing there are as it relates to online and offline. Not that you have to become a marketing wizard, like nobody's expecting that. That's ridiculous. But you do need to have some sort of basic foundation to know, hey, when somebody talks about PPC versus SEO, what's the difference between these two? What should I expect a billboard to do versus a Facebook ad campaign to do? Just some basic level of knowledge to understand it from a managerial standpoint to help you kind of navigate a lot of the snake oil that you see floating around online.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Ryan. Okay, so what questions should they ask? Because I don't even know, what was the difference between SEO and PPC? I don't even know what PPC. What is PPC?
Yeah. So PPC,
it's this, right? Is that right?
Pay per click. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's
good guess.
So basically, when you're talking about web traffic, like things online, so think about going to a computer. There's basically two types of ways to get it. One is to earn that traffic. So this is going to be through reputation. This is going to be through like just organic presence ranking. You're going to find this language like SEO, maps ranking, things like that. Press releases would count in this. But the other type is to pay for that traffic. That's going to be Google local services, pay-per-click, it's AdWords. If you're on Bing, it's Bing ads. But these are similar products that help you kind of shortcut organically ranking. The main difference is organic ranking is very, very valuable. It just takes forever. Google's time frame right now is between 4 to 12 months before you see change and any sort of that organic visibility. On PPC, it's going to be very, very fast. It's going to be like you could have a campaign up and going within an hour if you wanted. The real big difference outside of speed then is cost of acquisition. Organic over time is super, super cheap to create leads. Pay-per-click over time is going to be really, really expensive to create leads. So you kind of want to find a mix that actually makes sense for you.
Well, how do I determine? There's two buckets. There's let's say branding versus immediate kind of gratification. I'm going to get somebody who's going to buy what I want. And I guess Google owns the planet when it comes to search, right?
Yeah,
so how do I know how much do I allocate toward branding, which is long-term, versus pay-per-click or things that are quickly happening? And even what kind of dollars should I look at? Should I look at it per lead, per visit, per job? How do I judge whether this makes any sense or not?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a really great question. And so for one, probably a good resource I want to recommend here also. There's two things. These are going to be self-promotional. I don't intend them to be. I literally wrote a book on this topic a few years ago called The Book on Digital Marketing for Plumbing and HVAC Contractors. Okay. The principles apply to pest control, to roofers, to landscapers, doesn't matter. That's probably worth a read. You can grab it on Amazon. Another resource is our YouTube or TikTok channels. Both of them, we answer questions just like this all day, every day, because these are really good questions. So in general, I would say I'm going to move away from the dollar sign. It doesn't matter what your budget is. It really matters what percentage of your revenue you're allocating towards marketing. So in general, I like to follow the SBA guidelines every year. The Small Business Administration in the US has these guidelines to put out and what most businesses invest in marketing. Right now, the past few years, it's been between 7 and 8% of revenue to maintain your size. So that means if you're a $100,000 a year company, you should invest between 7 and 8% of that back into marketing just to maintain your stability. Now, depending on if you're trying to grow, I feel comfortable with companies want to invest up to 10% of that revenue. That's totally fine. Beyond 10%, sometimes it gets reckless. A lot of companies don't have the means to cash flow that well. But that's kind of the starting point. So don't really look at dollars as like, this is how much I should spend as a dollar amount, because it's really irrelevant. It really is as a percentage of the revenue you either are or you're trying to get to. So that's kind of step one. Say again?
No, I was wondering, like, let's say you got a company that's doing 2 million. All right. Theoretically, that means you should spend 150,000 or something like that on marketing, right? That's But does marketing count like the salesperson's salary? Does it count? I mean, because does it count the appointment setter? Does it count the people answering the phone calls? I mean, does it just include what you're actually spending on ads? What is inclusive in the marketing budget?
So typically, I love this question. Typically, I would say a marketing budget is anything that's getting the phone to ring to begin with. So once the phone rings, it's going to flip from marketing to ops, and that's going to be CSRs, it's going to be salespeople. Like that's in the world of ops, commission them separately. But for anything getting that lead in the door, that's going to be the world of marketing. So that could be everything from billboards, TV, radio, that could be PPC, Facebook ads, doesn't matter, all those things down there. So that's kind of how I would break that. I would say 7 to 10%-ish of your revenue should be allocated on things to get the phone to ring. After that, now it's CSR training, it's sales training, it's customer experience training, it's all those things to help maximize that lead conversion.
Okay, now some of the questions are going to be, well, do you price it per lead, per job? Because, for example, I've got some clients that most of their work comes from architects, and it's 2 to 5 million a project, and their margins maybe 15% on a good day. I got other clients that are doing, remodels or HVAC, and they got a 40, 50% margin, and their average size is like, $20, $50, $80,000. So how do you consider those percentages into your marketing budget?
I love this. So yeah, so there's a couple of variables you always want to consider. Versus actually going to, the fundamental one breaks down to what's called cost of acquisition. So this is how much it costs you not to make a lead, but to make a customer. So this means it takes in booking rates, it takes in sales closing rates, everything from getting the phone to ring to actually getting them paying dollars in your pocket. You want to have a good idea of how much exactly that costs you to make that customer. If your average ticket is greater than that, awesome. You'd be surprised how many people don't actually know what their average ticket is for a job. Personally, I'm comfortable paying $3,000 for a cost of acquisition to get a customer if I know I'm going to get a $2 million job out of the deal. I'll do that all day long. Wash, rinse, repeat, right? The math works out. So that's when you're going to get into like ROAS or ROI. So now you're going to compare how much money you collected versus how much money it actually costs you to get that customer to begin with. If that's 5 to 1 or more, you're okay. Some channels are going to be more efficient than others. Some are going to be less efficient than others. That doesn't mean that they're good or bad. It just means that some are going to cost more or be more profitable just because the cost of acquiring that customer will go up or down depending on the channel. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm sort of confused. So let's say I've got a company that's doing 10 million. Their average margin is 15%. It's only doing 1.5 million in actual gross revenue and gross profit, right?
Gross profit. Yeah.
Right. Another company is doing 3 million and their average margin is 40%. So it's 1.2 million gross profit with a lot less, volume. So how do I work on my percentage of marketing budget when my gross profit can be some companies 15% and some companies 50 or 60%?
Yeah, so great question. So if you notice what I said earlier from the SBA guidelines, it has nothing to do with gross or net margins. It's top line revenue. That is the only deciding factor. So if a company's operations are poor, great. They're going to have a smaller bottom line. That's just going to be like larger chunks getting taken out from everything because their operations are inefficient. That doesn't impact what you should allocate from a KPI, from a marketing standpoint, because that comes from the top, not from the bottom.
So you're telling me, I have a hard time with this. if I've got use a $10 million company that's working on 15%, right? That means there's 150,000, 1.5 million in gross profit, right?
Okay.
If I've got a $10 million service company, I'm making 5 million in gross profit. And you're saying I should spend, say 10%, $1 million on either company for marketing?
Marketing is getting the phone to ring. It's not about operational efficiency. So if their overhead is poor, if they're overstaffed, if their training is bad, if the callback rates are bad, if anything bad is internal, that should not impact the actual work of getting that phone to ring, right? You don't rob from Peter to pay Paul. So top line becomes the reference because that's the either target you're trying to get to. So if this $10 million company is trying to get to 15, cool. You got a budget for a $15 million company. If your gross or net margins suck in the process, that's an operations problem to figure out. That's not a marketing problem.
Right. But in some cases, if you're calling on architects, I'll give you an example. Some people get all their work from architects and designers. There's virtually no money in marketing other than schmoozing, meeting the right people, free Christmas gifts. I mean, I've guys at 10 million that don't spend 50,000 on marketing. And yet I got other companies that are doing 6 million that spend a couple 100,000 on marketing because they're margin 40%. And they got to get the phone to ring. So how do you differentiate between companies where your reputation or brand, or like you're the big, the big kahuna, the big, custom builder in the market versus you're doing a bunch of HVAC calls at, 10,000 or 5,000, 8,000 a piece?
Yeah, what's funny here is the money washes out almost the same. And here's what I mean. When I was in college, a lot of people don't know this story about me. When I was in college, I got a job waiting tables to pay for tuition. So this is my undergrad. And I was working at a Chinese restaurant that was super, super popular. Everyone wanted to go there. And they did zero marketing budget, right? They did not spend a penny on TV, billboard, radio, nothing. No advertising. All that marked dollars went to focusing on customer experience. So focus on training, they focus on providing extra food for the guests, to making sure that everything that happened with the customer when they sat at the table made them want to talk about the business outside of that restaurant experience. And it worked. So the dollar was still being spent. But instead of being spent on billboard or TV or radio, it's being spent on everything about making sure that customer experience is top notch. So the investment is the same, right? So if somebody's smoozing on golf courses or smoozing in press boxes at football stadiums, that's the same sort of expenditure. It's just not on the same channels. It's not done on Facebook ads or PPC. And that's totally great. And honestly, in a lot of B2B sort of industries, that is the best way to focus their efforts. Hiring quality people that present well, that know how to command attention in a room and have them have the opportunity to make those interactions. Spending more money on Facebook ads or Google ads usually doesn't move the needle when that's the industry trying to penetrate.
Well, because I look at it, I always tell people, well, if you want to marry rich women, you have to date rich women, marketing 1A. So, you hang out at the country club, not at the laundromat. It's bad analogy, you know what I mean, right? So,
but it kind of is. Yeah, that's kind of how it works.
So I would say when you're looking at marketing, again, do you want a bunch of billionaire clients on one extreme, or you want a bunch of people that need their, their hot water heater fixed for $500, right? And it's
and the channels, it totally is the channels that you would choose to market to those people. So I would make the argument that it's still marketing. It's still marketing to know who is your millionaire or billionaire client you're trying to reach, or if you're trying to get like Susie May in her house whose water heater died. It's still marketing to know who those people are and how to reach them. The channels you utilize, if it's magazine, billboard, TV, radio, or a suite at the Dallas Cowboys, those are going to change based on the goals you're trying to accomplish, which is why the first thing I said was it's really helpful to know your goal, because you'd be surprised how many people don't know what they're trying to do.
Right. And so what if you're trying to make a transition, and this for construction, to doing, Joe Lunchbox kind of average guy service calls to dealing with really wealthy people building custom houses? How would you make that transition in marketing? Because it's two different things, right? Can you do both at the same time? How do you make that shift? I just talked to a guy this morning. He said, well, I'm doing 3 million in service call, but it's, remodeling between 100 and 150,000. Okay. And at the same time, then you're looking at another group that does, he wants to get into the $2 to $5 million projects for wealthy people in his market. Does he start another website? Does he try to get them together? How do you go from A to B without running over each other?
Yeah. So the best way to describe this, and it's funny because I had a conversation with a guy who did the same thing, except he went from doing commercial work and commercial work is great for a lot of reasons because it usually cash flows well. You have work that you can have in the calendar for 6, 9, 12 months in the future. The problem with it is like your payment terms are really, really crappy. Your margins can be really, really small. And the time to earn the contract sucks. This is especially true if you do any sort of government work. And he's wanting to transition into service work. Service work tends to be very, very high margin. You get paid the moment the work is done. Like everyone tends to like it, but it's much more volatile.
Right.
So part of that lesson is realizing this isn't just changing marketing. This is literally changing into a new business. The people required to actually work with the customer are going to be different. Like there are fundamental different soft skills if you're doing residential service versus you're doing commercial. If you're trying to go after a billionaire company, the type of people you're going to utilize in that mix are going to be very, very different than the people who are going to be pumping a sewer or working on a septic in the backyard, right? So it is not just do different marketing, do different branding. It really is a different business operation from top to bottom. And I would make the argument that both should have independent financials, both should be able to be held accountable and be efficient operations on their own right. That said, we have clients who do both. And I could make an argument for why sometimes one is better than another. We have clients who have two different brands, one for commercial or B2B sort of space, and then another for residential or B2C sort of spaces. We have other companies who they put everything under one brand. There are pros and cons to both. There's not a one size fits all. It really is what makes sense in your market for your operations and make it work that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were going to give somebody some advice, okay, as a marketing guy, okay, we already got advice on the budget, maybe how to find a company. How do you tell if it's working or not? Because people want to go ROI. They go, well, if I'm going to spend 50,000, I get 5 times back. So what kind of metrics do you use to determine whether it's working or not?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think a lot of people look at ROI, and I would make the argument that ROI is typically a byproduct of ops. So for instance, we have clients we work with, we can have really good cost of acquisition. So the cost of getting the customer can be very, very inexpensive. But if their operation sucks, it's the difference between them making 10 to 1 or 38 to 1, right? And the ones who make the 38 to 1 are masters of operations, not marketing. So I would make the argument first, make sure the ops are dialed in. So make sure you know your ops numbers, whatever those KPIs for you, make sure you own those every day. Once you have that, make sure you know each channel of marketing and what you're trying to accomplish. Weird example, if somebody's wanting to do 20 billboards in their market, totally cool. It would be unrealistic for them to assume that those 20 billboards are going to result in more phone calls happening that day.
Right.
Does that mean billboards are broken? Nope. That's just not the job of billboards. Like I don't know one person who drives down the road, sees a billboard and pulls out their phone.
Doesn't do that. Right.
Right. That's just not the intent of that channel. So make sure you understand the channel and how you're going to measure success for that particular channel, which is part of the reason I wrote the book on digital marketing, because it helps people understand, cool, this is what I can expect from billboard. This is what I can expect from SEO. This is what I can expect from Facebook. So you can measure each channel based on what it should actually produce, not by something you wish it did.
Right. Okay. So, and then how often should you evaluate your marketing campaign?
Ooh, good question. I think it depends on the complexity and the size of the campaigns. So for instance, if somebody has a very, very small AdWords campaign, AdWords is a PPC product that we mentioned earlier. And by, let's say small, let's say they're doing $1,000 or less per month on PPC spend. Frankly, you're not going to see the data in granularity for maybe a year to know what's working and what's not.
Wow.
There's just not enough data flowing through the platform. However, if you're spending $100,000 a month on AdWords, you'll probably get some insights within a few weeks. You'll probably have some ideas to go, hey, these are valuable customers. These are the ones who are most profitable. Let's target more of those. It really depends on the size and complexity of the budget. For some campaigns, TV, billboard, radio, anything top of funnel, those things you might not be able to evaluate until the second year that they exist.
Whoa.
So the first year, yeah, it totally is a long time. And there's actually a joke, we call it the Valley of Death. Like between month 3 and month 12, you're like, oh, this sucks. And you're still paying money. Those channels haven't had time to cook yet. Once they actually start cooking, now you can start measuring them. But if you do it too early or you measure the wrong things, you're always going to be frustrated.
Okay. So I guess patience is a virtue in this case, right?
Patience. Know the goal you're trying to get. Make sure your expectations are valid. One of the big things I feel like I see people see, this is a common thing. I learned about this in undergrad, is a lot of guys, especially when they're starting a new type of marketing, they'll want to fund it. And it's what's called the S curve. Like they'll fund it. They're like, hoo, they're spending money, and they start noticing their bank account going down. Like, this is the wrong way. It shouldn't be going down. In reality, if they keep funding through it, the S curve picks back up, right? It ends up higher than where it started. So many people panic and bail out at the bottom of the S curve. So before the marketing has time to cook, absolutely be patient, absolutely understand, like, hey, when you work with a vendor, if you work with an agency, what is their expected horizon to be able to start measuring, are we on the right track or not, and adjust accordingly. But it's not one of those like throw crap in the wind and see what happens.
Well, the
You should
problem
have
is
a plan.
most contractors have no patience. You probably figured that out, right?
Oh yeah, totally. We work with these guys all day, every day. So making sure that we know, cool, early on, you're not going to notice in your bank account, but early on, here's the data points that we can track to go, okay, if we're pointing in the wind, we're kind of pointing in the right direction, right? You're not going to go buy a steak dinner, you're not going to buy the new boat, but you'll have an idea. Are we heading east, west, south, or north? And then once you play it out over time, then you'll start seeing those gains pile up. But yeah, it just takes time.
How do you manage the expectations of, contractors? You have a recruiting company, right? And I think you should be recruiting all the time, but most contractors look at a project, recruit the guy, boom, and you're done. And I can see the terror in a contractor's face. He's spending, pick a number, $5,000 on marketing. He's into the thing for 6 months, and he's got, in his opinion, no ROI. He goes, damn, I just spent whatever, $30,000, $40,000, and I haven't got one job from it. How do you deal with those kind of guys? Because I'm sure it happens, right?
Oh, it happens all the time. Yeah, I'm a fan of telling contractors on the front end, hey guys, just so you know, it's going to suck for 6 months. Like, you're going to call me a month forward. You're going to be like, this sucks. I'm going to be like, no, remember we talked about this. This is what it was. And just reminding them of those things early on. Where I think contractors get really, really frustrated is when, and this happens a lot in the marketing space, unfortunately, is I talk to someone who promises them the moon. So, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And you're going to notice your bank account's so full by tomorrow. That doesn't happen. That's not real. And so when those things happen, now it's met with excuses and explanations and denials and diversions. That's when contractors get really, really pissed off, and they should. But if they know early on, it's like going to the gym. No one goes to the gym one time, lifts one set of weights and goes, why the hell didn't the scale change? Nope.
Right.
You have to do this all day, every day, eat the right food, even when you don't feel like it. Over time, you'll see it stack up. But no, you're not going to see anything after you do one set of curls, buddy. I'm sorry.
Right. So
saying that early is helpful.
Reasonable because I know when people are calling architects, they say, well, nothing's going to happen for 6 months. And they go, because, they've already got a girlfriend and it's not you. I mean, that's just the way it is. Right?
Yeah.
So, and so it's the same kind of thing, I think, marketing. So patience is important. You're talking about like a year. I mean, what is a typical patience needed to determine whether it's going to work or not? Because sooner or later, you got to say this isn't working, but I don't know when that's
totally. And it absolutely is channel specific. So TV, billboard, radio, top of funnel, I would say 12 months is the earliest you can start measuring something. Press release, anything that involves public sentiment, you should probably be able to measure it within a couple weeks of the work being done. So a news article being published, people talking about you in the news, you should be able to notice that sentiment change fairly quickly. If you're doing things like SEO, there's nothing you can do about SEO. SEO, according to Google, takes 4 to 12 months. That's just a slow game. There's nothing overnight about it. So if you're 3 months into doing SEO and you're like, why the hell is nothing changing? Well, welcome to the rest of the world, sir. It just depends on the channel. Probably one of the worst things that people can do is undercapitalize their marketing and then be impatient at the same time. So someone just wanted to like dip their toe, want to try this. I'll do one billboard and I'll do it for a couple months and see what happens. Yeah, you're going to be disappointed. Just throw your money down the drain, call it good.
And even pay-per-click and that kind of thing still takes a while, right?
Yeah, it's faster than like organic. The trick is you just got to capitalize it. So if someone's willing to say, hey, we're willing to allocate $50K, $100K a month to build out a PPC campaign, awesome. You'll get that data really fast. If you're willing to do $1,000 a month, there's just not enough data flowing through the platform to actually understand what it's telling you. So the faster you want, I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, the faster you want results, fund it better, fund it faster, fund it harder, because you get a lot of those insights a lot quicker.
Okay. So, Ryan, let's say somebody is interested in what you know, read your book or whatever. How will they get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way is just hit up our website, which is levergy.io. There's a giant green schedule call button. You reach out to anyone on our team. Obviously, any of the social platforms you can find us there, TikTok, YouTube, wherever. We're pretty everywhere. As far as speaking conferences, we write a lot, so we're easy to find.
Very cool. And is there any obligation for the first phone call? Because, you know, I think they're going to have to get to know you a little bit before they decide you're the right guy, right?
Oh, I hope they do, which is part of the reason why we always have videos going out. We always blog articles going out. We always are writing in different trade magazines. We want people to know who we are and how we think and our philosophies on things, because we're not for everyone, but we want to be very transparent, very open-handed from the front end. So you can take a look at all of our resources for months and months and months without paying us a penny. And for the first conversation, no charge at all. Just schedule a call and we'll get you on the calendar.
So given the people that are listening to this are mostly contractors in $1 million and 10 million, what kind of a budget dollar-wise am I going to need for you to be interested in working with me?
It's less of about $1 budget for us. Really, it really is about, like, is a company willing to allocate the right KPI into their business successfully. So if someone's a $5 million business, but they only want to invest 2 or 3% in marketing, for me, that's a concern, because that's just not a KPI. They're going to notice peaks, like peaks and valleys really quick in their lead flow, and they're going to be frustrated in the process. So for us, it's like, nope, do they have the ability and diligence to say, hey, they're willing to allocate perpetually 7 to 10% of revenue or target revenue, and no, cool, that stuff can be managed. I can allocate how it needs to go. So rather than just a total dollar, it really is just like, what's the mindset of the company like? We take pride that the clients we work with are really smart. They're really savvy. They have really smart skills of being able to be analytical. They're not just impulsive. So if you are someone who likes to understand, you want to plan, you want to be smart, not just be impulsive and like, let's push buttons, we'd probably be a great fit.
Okay. So if somebody's not willing to, I'm going to say a minimum of 5 to 6% of annual revenue, probably not a good client for you, right?
It would probably be a stretch to be able to say that we can do our best work for that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, good to know. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Good information. And I definitely check out his books and his website, because there's a ton of free information on the website, right? So you can
Tons.
get an education in marketing just by going to Levergy and take all the free stuff, right?
There's tons of free stuff. I seriously go through, harvest it. Like, I've got my undergrad in marketing, I've got an MBA. There's all sorts of research backed information in there. Take whatever you want, steal it, use it for your own, knock yourself out.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you being here.
Paul, thanks for having me on.
Have a good one.